Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Zha. Today we have the crowd's favorite, Einar Tangen, Senior Fellow from CIGI. Welcome back to the show, Einar.
Carl, it's always a pleasure to be here. It's just surreal. I mean, we were talking. Are we living in an episode of South Park? I mean, you couldn't find somebody to invent this stuff. They'd be like, no, that's crazy. How could you? No one would ever say that. Hey, listen, I started this war. I didn't tell anybody. It's turned into a fiasco. So I'm leaving. And by the way, if you guys want oil, you should figure it out. And oh yes, GCC, you should pay for this war. I come over to your house. I start a fire. And then I insist that you should put it out. And the insurance company should pay me.
And he's telling Europe to buy American oil. Like first he cuts Europe from the Russian oil and gas. And now the Middle East oil is got like, oh, you can buy American. Go ahead.
One small problem, Carl. We don't have enough oil to sell them. You can't take 1/5 of the world's oil and gas away and then say, well, we can add maybe 2, 3, up to 5%. So you take out 20, you add 5. Last I checked, supply, demand, inelasticity, all of these little words, it means that prices of oil are going up, and that's why he's afraid. I mean, he sees the writing on the wall.
And United States actually don't have oil for sale because what they, if you look at the data, U.S. is a net exporter of petroleum products. But what actually the export is these liquefied, some kind of petroleum gas that was a byproduct of the drilling, but that's not really oil. And so United States is actually a net importer of the crude oil. It imports I think I saw 6 million barrel per day, yes. And then export 3 million barrel per day because United States, they produce the wrong kind of oil for the U.S. refineries. So they export the shale oil and import the heavy crude. That's actually the U.S. refinery accepts. So U.S. is actually a net crude oil importer. Europe can buy oil from the United States. There's not enough.
It can buy gas. We do have a net export of gas. But let me explain the details in case somebody's wondering. Yeah. Right. So there's basically two kinds of oils, and it's a rainbow. But at one end you have this heavy tar-like stuff, and this is the stuff they get from the oil sands of Canada. And also from Venezuela. It's extremely heavy. I mean, it's really, really dense and thick, and not something you put in your gas tank. But it has its uses. You cannot make diesel without it, and you cannot make the stuff they put on the roads, the tarmac and stuff like that. You can't make that without this heavy oil. Now the U.S. Through fracking. Which means you pump stuff into the ground and that kind of forces this oil out. It's what's called sweet or light crude. So it's really good if you want to make it into gasoline and things like that, but it's two different refining processes. The U.S., for some reason, doesn't really process as much, and there's not as much necessary when you're processing this sweet crude, the very light oil. But the heavy oil you do. But for some reason, in the south of the United States, they have a tremendous number of these heavy crude cracking facilities, the processing of them. And also we have our own internal needs. So there's this feeling that, he went after Venezuela because then he's, if you're going to attack the world, it's nice to have a little backup. So he's thinking that, we take over Venezuela, which has lots and lots of the stuff. Although over the years, there ability to produce has gotten less because the U.S. Embargoed them. It was harder to get the parts that they needed to repair the oil rigs. Also, they were, in fact, eating the goose that was laying the golden eggs. They weren't keeping it up to the same level because they had a lot of internal, issues about money. They were spending too much and they were bringing in too little. So when people are thinking about oil, think about it as two different types and two different types of processing, and they have different uses. So this is an area where people, like yourself, are just like, well, what's going on here? Oil is oil. No, unfortunately not. But in terms of gas, yes, U.S. has a lot of gas, but it's in order to transport this gas, you have to cool it down to incredibly, low temperatures, literally to liquefy the gas. That takes energy. And then you have to load it onto platforms, ships, if you're going to take it overseas. And when that happens, of course, you need very specialized ships. You'll see them. It looks like they have these round globes, generally 2 or 3 of them, and they inject it in there, and it has to be kept cool. Then when it arrives, you can't just use it off the boat. You then need a special reception plant that gradually warms the gas up so it deliquefies, and then you put it into the pipes and people can burn it. So it's about 3 times as expensive as regular gas. So it's American gas at 3 times the price of what they were buying piped gas from Russia, because they weren't liquefying it. They were just running it through a pipe and going over. But somehow, I don't know how, but somehow the Nordstream 2 blew up. I'm sure it was just a bunch of drunken Ukrainians, and the fact that the U.S. was circling the area and watching it had all sorts of ships there.
Hobby boats. They were on hobby boats.
Well, there was some sort of sailboat, but there was a demolitions expert. I mean, these aren't like pipes you just throw into the water. They're buried. They're extremely heavy and they're buried, and they try to put stuff on top of them to prevent, anchors from dragging on them and things like that. They have to protect them. So this is not something. So the amount of explosives necessary to do the damage that they did, you were talking a couple of tons. So, I mean, the idea of what was it? This is some sort of fishing boat carrying a couple of tons of high explosives, and then they're able to find this, it's really dark and deep. How do you find the pipe, right? That might be a bit of a challenge if you just have a wetsuit on and you're kind of combing around for it. Yeah,
and they were doing that in the most monitored sea lane in the world.
Wow. That's a small thing. And the fact that Biden said he was going to blow it up before. If there was a war between Ukraine and Russia, I'm sure that had no bearing on it whatsoever. But it's what if you want to have some fun? If you're talking to a European, just say, "Hey, who blew up Nord Stream 2?" You're going to see a mix of emotions cross their face if they know about it. It's supposedly Ukrainians. Yeah,
well, if you ask a Polish, you ask, was it a prime minister of Poland that tweeted out a congratulation message when the Nord Stream got blown up on Twitter?
To the U.S.
To the U.S.
Trying to walk it back after that. Well, I was just saying in a general congratulatory term. But you notice he didn't send the message to the Ukrainians. In any event, the games they play, but this is serious stuff. And you start putting all the little pieces together, Carl. It looks really damning. First, you have Europe being cut off from its cheap energy supply, which of course it creates a mass exodus of companies because they can no longer be competitive. Then you have Trump. He was bombing Nigeria, which they have a lot of oil too, don't they? And then he goes after Venezuela, all the while he's telling countries you're not to trade with China, don't sell them oil, don't do anything with them. And then all of a sudden he goes after Iran, which it's not the major part of China's imports. They were kind of 11 million barrel imports, and Iran was about 1.5 million per day. So it's part of it, but it's not really the whole part of what China uses and things like that. So I mean, it does kind of lead one to believe that despite all the kind of weird stuff that Trump is doing, that there are those around him who are pushing him in a certain direction. There's always been this feeling in Washington that if you could cut China off from its energy, you could, in essence, contain it. Without energy, how is China going to run? They miss a few things. First off, China has the largest reserve in the world, somewhere between 1.2 and 1.4 billion barrels of oil. And in the last few months prior to the attack on Iran, they were building up their reserves. They had increased their buying by 16%, and that was for storage, not for use. So this gives them, some time. You can take 11 million barrels per day. They can probably replace maybe up to 2, 3 at most. And then you take 8 and you put it into, 8 million into 1.2 to 1.4 billion. They have some time. China also, during the medium term, is, they have, factories waiting to produce, solar panels, also windmills. They're largest user of alternative energy, and I'm certain that I know I've talked to the people who own those factories, and they said, yeah, we're going full steam right now. It had been very, very bad in the solar industry because of the competition, and also because of tariffs and things like that in Europe and in America. Now everyone wants it, they need it. The battery industry is taking off, but in addition to that, China has coal, mountains of it. They could literally run their economy on coal for the next 40 years. They don't want to do it. They've been switching away from it, but if they have to go back to it, they can. So that produces electricity. Now, people should also know that in terms of oil, it's not all going into something that moves. About 40% of oil is used in industrial processes. So, the chemicals you use in your house, the chemicals that are used in industrial processes, fabric, rayon, all of these artificial fabrics, they're made from oil, perfume. So you go around, about 40% is what is really necessary for China in terms of maintaining oil. Now they can maintaining their ability to produce. The energy, for the rest of it, they've had a very high acceptance of EVs, which is, gasoline, which is on it, but you still need it for airplanes and things like that. And lately, China has been making their calculations, and you'll note that they have been sending, especially diesel oil, to hard-hit areas in the global south, especially in ASEAN, to try to help those countries who do not have these big reserves to overcome it. It's because it's not just cost. It's just, if I'm a farmer and I don't have diesel, I can't run my factory, tractor. I don't run my tractor, I'm not going to be able to plant my fields in time. And the time to plant is the time to plant. You miss it, you miss the crop. So this isn't a case where I can put it off for a couple of months or something like that. So they're in real trouble. They also need diesel because a lot of them run their water supply systems, their irrigation systems, using diesel pumps. Now this can be replaced. There are, a couple of solar panels can run a half horsepower, pump, and use a battery to regulate the current that's going in, and just save up a little bit, but you can literally run it, and you don't need as much irrigation at night. So obviously, this is a solution. And quite frankly, solar is so cheap now; it's actually better than coal. It's cheaper than coal, and now it's cheaper than, of course, oil. So these are things that can be done in the medium term. Over the long term, China has 20 nuclear plants that are coming onto line. They have a target of about 15% of their total electricity generation is going to be done by nuclear. But the really big issue is that Chinese don't put things very lightly into their 15-year plans. I mean, their 5-year plans. This is the 15th 5-year plan. And in that plan, they talk about having a commercially viable fusion reactor. So the difference between fusion and nuclear is that nuclear, if it explodes or something, you have a problem. The half-life is going to destroy everything. People die of cancer. This is what they use in bombs. But fusion doesn't create any kind of bad effects. It's just, you fuse these atoms. It produces a lot of heat, and then you run the steam generators, but there's no nuclear contamination. And because it's almost limitless in terms of the amount of fuel that's available, you really, you have something that is for thousands of years could power the world. And if that happens, it changes everything. You still need oil as a feedstock for chemicals and things like that, but electricity, all right, to run pumps, you can even pull water out of the air if you have enough electricity. Just think about a refrigerator. What does it do? It produces condensation. Well, that's that same kind of idea. You can produce water. In fact, you can produce water in the desert, because even in the desert, in the driest ones, you're 35 to 40% of moisture in the air. It feels dry, but the fact is there's plenty of moisture there, and it can be brought out. So that really changes things. You can now have irrigation in areas that were too dry before. You're not dependent on bringing water out of the ground. And you obviously you don't have to depend on rivers and streams and things like that. So agriculture would change. So this is the long-term plan for China. And all of this happens not because of a crisis. It happens because China has been thinking about these issues long term, and they were preparing for them. They have put money into creating this industry, supporting the science and the technology necessary to get to a fusion reactor. But if that happens, it's not going to just be China that benefits. It's going to be the entire world. It really changes so much. You with a fusion reactor, if you can get it small enough, you can run your boats forever. You just have to clean them up every once in a while. So there's so many different aspects to that that people, it's hard to keep track of it all. But the fact is, there's different kinds of oils. There's different kinds of uses for oils. And the future is not about oil for energy as much as using other alternative forms of energy. And China's on top of it. And unfortunately, many other countries are not.
Yeah, but right now, the longer the Strait of Hormuz is closed, I know Donald Trump claimed that he already reopened it. There's tons of ships that's going through, which is completely nonsense.
Oh, no.
Because
naturally, it opened naturally. Yes, it's like a flower. It's just blooming. You add and it blooms.
Because we have the marine traffic data, and so far there's about 7 ships that have transited the Strait of Hormuz through the Iranian side, the Iranian territorial water, and they. Most of them all had to pay a toll to Iran and pay in RMB, in yuan, because Iran don't trust any US dollar denominated bank account that can be freeze.
They can't use it since they're outlawed and sanctioned from using it. China controls the SWIFT system, which is the bank settlement system. They swore that they would never weaponize it. Oh, well, I guess that promise didn't work out. Yeah, no, they can't use dollars at all. And they don't want to use dollars because they see that as propping up the US economic system and this enormous debt of $39 trillion and growing, especially because of this war. 200 billion here, 200 billion there. It adds up. Soon it's like real money. Not the hex
and Besson openly said he's gonna jujitsu Iranians with their own oil by lifting the sanction on Iranian oil. So if the Iranian now go rush out to sell their oil to other U.S. partners, we as U.S. Treasury, we have visibility to see where the money goes into. Then we can freeze their bank account so Iran don't get that money. I mean, he said that on television. Everybody now know the plan.
Yeah, it was a secret plan until he let the secret out. The problem with Besant is I think he's smart enough to know what's going on, but for some reason he's able to suspend his disbelief and say nonsensical things. First off, the Iranian's oil output has been severely curtailed. Yes, a very important part of its economy. But with the island under attack, Karg Island, all right, how much Iranian oil is getting out? There's some, but it's a trickle. Even if they attack if they do attack the island, it means that loading and through that area is going to be impossible. So the Marines can sit there if they can, stand all the missile barrages and things like that. But quite frankly, Iran will look for other ways, pipelines, et cetera, to get their oil out. But in the meantime, what is Iran's plan? And you mentioned it. They're collecting tolls. So as these ships pass, as they go out, they're paying tolls. And if you start looking at, even if they only let out 20% of, the 2 million barrels a day, at the rate they're collecting, they will make up all the revenue that they're losing because they can't export oil themselves. So, and that it's all being paid in renminbi. They don't need to do anything. So, Scott Bessent is saying is nonsense. They can't export the oil in large measure through there. So saying that you can export oil is kind of nonsensical. And then this idea that somehow we're going to jujitsu you and take your money because you're too stupid to understand what I just told you I was going to do, that doesn't work. Iranians are not stupid. They're it's a long history of civilization there and extremely, sophisticated businessmen, engineers. They're not fooled by Scott Bessent at all. So it's kind of it's a head scratcher. Why is he telling them the plan that doesn't even make sense? And the only thing you can think of, it's for public consumption. And once again, keep the headlines away from the Epstein files, which continues to have a life of its own, despite all of the things that are going on. I mean, it just seems to me like almost daily there's another Trump, MAGA supporter who's being arrested for diddling little children or exchanging child pornography. And these are the people screaming about pedophilia, accusing Democrats of, drinking the blood of babies and running, child sex operations in the basement of a pizza parlor. Unfortunately, the pizza parlor does not have a basement, but, these are the kind of nonsensical things they're saying. And now we understand that the people saying it, many of them were in fact involved in pedophilia themselves. So it's very strange stuff.
Well, I think if the war drags on longer, I mean, this whole Iran war fiasco might even hit him harder even than Epstein files, because you can see now even J.D. Vance is quietly distant himself. He hasn't appeared in many places. He hasn't said anything about the Iran war because he will jeopardize his run for 2028 if he's seen too close to Trump's position on the Iran war. I think Trump knows this. But Trump is hard to tell because one day he will tweet out he wants US out. We're washing our hands. It's not our business. And the next day he will say, like today, he just said, we're going to bomb them back to Stone Ages.
Yeah,
I
there's
don't know
a
what's
certain
going on.
inconsistency. I don't think it takes a day. I think his record is 2 hours. He switched from we're out of here to I'm going to blast them. Yeah, they're not consistent. In terms of JD Vance, it's interesting. I mean, when he did campaign for president, he campaigned on this issue that these are stupid wars that were costly and that were ruining America. It's very hard for him to go back on that. Of course, he said the same things about Trump, that he would never be a never Trumper, that this was a con man, the worst character ever, a habitual liar. Anything you want to say bad about Trump, he actually said. But the lure of power for many people and his backers. Remember, Peter Thiel has put about $250 million into, J.D. Vance's career. And, this is a group that, in essence, wants to bankrupt the government so they can privatize it. And they do not believe in democracy. They say that. They're Curtis Yarvin, who is their main philosophical sage, has
dark enlightenment, dark enlightenment philosopher.
And then if you doubt anything I'm saying, just please go to Palantir and look up the president and listen to anything he says, and you'll be convinced that the satanic cult is alive and well, but it's in the tech bro area. But the reason I mentioned the positioning of Vance is that Rubio and Vance are perceived as rivals in terms of trying to run for the Republican ticket. I don't think at this point there's any real chance that either one of them could do it. But maybe they wait out a couple of terms or something like that, and they try to reinvent themselves. But now Rubio is tarred. He can no longer run away from Trump's record or this war. And so he's kind of lost now. He represents the traditional neocon, pro-Israel military industrial complex, but also this group, and we talked last time, that are this blood and soil group. This blood and soil refers back to a German philosopher. His works were then used as a kind of a basis for Nazism. This idea that the blood and the soil are mixed, and that any kind of foreign blood coming in is wrong. This is the basis of the Jews are outsiders, and we need to get rid of them. So we should burn up 5 million or 6 million in ovens and kill them. But it was also the reason they just persecuted Poles. Millions of Poles died in labor camps and things like that, or slaughtered, as well as gypsies, people who had disabilities. I mean, this was across the board. It wasn't just the Jews who suffered under this. It was just anybody. And what they did to Russians when they got them was unspeakable. So you're in the situation now where he can't really walk away from that. So his star has diminished. Obviously, J.D. Vance is trying to position his star to be, somewhat apart from this, to run outside. What's unusual about this is that I think from Trump's perspective, if he can't pardon himself, he's certain to pardon his family and probably many of his cabinet members. I mean, he's already, basically pardoned most of the white-collar criminals in the United States based on a little consideration here, 2 million here, 2 million there, 2 billion there, etc. They've been able to buy their freedom. So I don't think he have any hesitation about pardoning his cabinet members, especially if it's necessary to keep them quiet. But then there's this issue about what does he do about himself? Because there are questions whether a president can pardon himself, because it in essence says the president is beyond the law. The Supreme Court gave him a gift last time by saying that if the president in his official capacity does anything, they cannot be prosecuted criminally. But this is a secondary question, and I think the Supreme Court would say no. Everybody, including the president, is subject to the law if it's outside his official capacity. And enriching yourself the way that he's doing and his family is doing is a clear case of violation of every ethic rules that there is. I mean, it's just incredible. You start seeing these spikes before he makes announcements. There's these spikes in people who obviously have some knowledge about it, and they're not trying to be subtle. They're making millions of dollars on these predictions and things like this. It can all be traced back to him and his children. So he needs somebody. I think he's hoping he can get somebody, a Republican, to pardon him. His other alternative is to resign 2 days before he leaves office. Automatically Vance would become president, and then he would have the power, just as Gerald Ford did to when he pardoned Nixon, to in essence pardon Trump. And this is an area where I'm certain he's thinking about that. He doesn't want to get too on the opposite side of J.D. Vance if he's depending on him for this pardon. So generally, if he sees somebody who's unloyal, we've seen his tantrums, find them, kill them, they're traitors and all this type of stuff. But for some reason, he's kept Vance on the side.
Yeah, I mean, the market manipulation is so blatant. He will come up right before the market opens on Monday. He will come out and make a statement about there's negotiation. We're talking with Iranians. We work out a deal. They're reasonable. And the market rallies. And then Friday after the market closes, it's like, we're going to bomb them back to Stone Ages. And every time.
Well, the market. The market did not rise after his speech.
Yeah,
let's talk about this speech.
Yes.
Carl, I mean, you look at him. I mean, this is not the same ebullient guy who was, on the campaign trail smirking and dancing his little dance and things like this. And, oh, you love me, I love you, all this stuff. He was a defeated man. A man who is prematurely aged. I mean, he's already older, but if you start looking at him, he's really haggard. And he was trying to do what his famous weave, and this is what they actually call it in the White House. They call it the Trump weave, where you take unconnected issues, for instance, inflation, and you say it's somehow to do with Iran, that Iran's a terrorist state, and therefore there's inflation. Because if you go through the speech, you'll notice that he'll mention the war, Iran, terrorism, and then he'll switch to inflation and jobs and all these expectations and things like that. So you can't really, if you're not paying too much attention, you'll get this sense that somehow it's not his fault, and that really is what he was trying to push to not only Americans but to the world. I mean, this, as we were talking about, this idea that I start a war. I don't tell you. I just go in. In fact, you think I'm working on a peace plan, and the peace plan is going so well. The Iranians have given up what I said was my problem, which was said, okay, we'll give you all of our enriched fuel, and you can take them somewhere else. And instead of going forward, he has this attack that's been planned a couple of weeks before, when Bibi Netanyahu showed up at the White House for 4 days, and they said, okay, we need to attack. So there was no good faith in the negotiations, which of course destroys trust. And this isn't the first time he's done it. He did it the last time when they were talking peace. So he attacks them, doesn't tell anybody. The world is surprised, shocked. Everybody in the world knows about the Straits of Hormuz, and especially in the United States government. If you go back 30 years, there's white paper after white paper saying, the problem with doing anything with Iran is the Straits of Hormuz. They can close it, they can mine it. It's so narrow, they can have a couple of guys in, like speedboats with rocket launched grenade launchers, and they could take out ships. I mean, ships are not, oil tankers, surprisingly, are not armored. All right. They're not there to withstand attacks by anything. They're supposed to get the oil safely from one place to another. A couple of rocket-propelled grenades in the right place, and you go boom. And this is, the insurance companies have basically said, we're not going to touch this. You know, you go through there, it's on your own. And so he starts this war, creates all these problems. All the bases in the Middle Eastern countries, especially GCC, of course, get attacked because Iran says, well, you're complicit, you're helping them. These countries in the GCC, I know many people from there, and they always say, well, an American base is a shield. No one's going to attack America. So, that was their theory until they realized that their shield had become a massive target for an attack by Israel and the US on Iran. So they're in this terrible situation now where Iran is striking out at them because they say you're complicit, and it has ruined their economies. We're talking tens of trillions of dollars of investment. Think of all the sports teams and that in the Middle East that they've been buying to try to create an environment which is about sports and living there, business environment. Buy condos. How many? Everyone knows somebody who lives in Dubai, and they were trying to create a business environment that was safe. With these attacks, it's really hard to see how that's going to recover, at least not until there's total stability in the Middle East. So this is a real hardship for the countries around them. But Iran is saying, look, we're alone in the world, and our only response is economic. The only thing we can do is take down the United States. And the only way we can do that is not militarily. The only way we can do that is attack the understructure of American finance, attack the area where the U.S. is soft in its $39 trillion deficit, on its dependence on the oil dollar to buy up all these treasury bonds and things like this. So they knew that if they increased the price of oil, this would have if they close the Straits of Hormuz, increases the price of oil, this would have a very, very sharp effect on the United States. The problem is countries that have nothing to do with this, who might even have great sympathies towards Iran, are also feeling the pain. You have countries that have no reserves and they're exposed. They don't have nothing. And you look in India, they're trying their best to try to keep the energy flowing, especially when it comes to tractors, which need diesel, because this is the planting season, and they just the farmers are running out. They don't want to discuss it too much, or they're trying to subsidize it, but the prices have gone up, and these farmers were not making billions of dollars. They were very much hand to mouth, and now they have increased costs. That, and also fertilizer, because from gas, from natural gas, there's a process which you strip out the nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
Yeah, the nitrogen is used for fertilizer, and that's about the stuff that was coming through the through the Gulf. There was about 20% of the world's fertilizer. So all of a sudden, you don't have the fertilizer you need, which is going to reduce your production anywhere from 15 to 25%. And then you don't have the petrol or the diesel to run your tractor to actually do the planting. And if you miss the planting season, then you've lost the whole crop. So this is extremely dire for many people in the world. We're expecting a food shock, regardless if tomorrow, all right, the Straits of Hormuz opened up and there was no things. The effects of this will be felt through the rest of the year. And in terms of food shock, in all sorts of areas. The supply chain does not recover in a couple of days or weeks. There has been real damage done. And then you start adding up the damage that's being done to the processing facilities. All right, 20% of the world's gas comes from Qatar. 2 out of 5 of their liquefaction, they have a huge liquefaction things, which I was telling you, you have to cool down the gas in order to make it into a liquid so you can put it on a boat. That has been attacked, and 2 out of the 5 nodes, I believe, have been destroyed. And they're not doing any right now because, it's under attack. So that was the stuff that was going to be used for not only heating homes and running things, but also for fertilizer. So there are huge impacts to all this. But you start looking around the Middle East at the number of plants that have been destroyed. You're talking about 5% of the world's processing capacity between oil and gas. That doesn't go away. That continues. So that's another added factor on top of the fact that you can't get it out, that even if you can, there's still going to be an increase. Now, remember, 5%, all right, in 1979, and then later with the Ukrainian war, 5% doubled the price of oil and gas. So this is a situation. There were short sparks and spikes in Europe where it went up 6 times. But I'm saying that overall, if you looked at over the year, it literally doubled the price of those energy sources. So, I mean, no matter what happens, we're going to continue to have a lasting shock. So Trump is, wow, he's all of a sudden somebody explained it to him. Maybe they use crayons, and I don't know. I don't know how you explain anything. He doesn't read anything, so somebody would, I guess, have to tell him. He says, you started something that you cannot finish, and this is going to ruin your chances in the midterm elections. You're going to be responsible for a global recession or depression, which is even more serious. And you've alienated all of your supposed allies except Israel, who just announced that they're not going to put any boots on the ground in Iran. They're going to leave that to American soldiers if, in fact, they do go in. But I mean, Carl, what I don't understand is, Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It has 3.5 times more people. And it has these mountain ranges, not 1, not 2, but 3 big mountain ranges, which very, very, very difficult to get into. It doesn't matter how many bombs you have. You have different valleys and things like that. It's literally very, very difficult to have a military win there, as Iraq found out when they had the Iraq-Iran war. So to the invasion of Iraq, the first time around, there were 720,000 American troops mobilized over 6 months. And then coalition forces brought that total number up to 1 million. So let's see here. If you're going to invade Iran and it's 4 times the size and 3.5 times as many people, you're going to have a lot more troops. And that's going to take a lot of logistics. And it's going to take time. And, sending 8,000 Marines in there or threatening to them it's either insane. And you've already heard the Iranians say, bring it on. We're waiting for them. We have a very warm welcoming party arranged for them. And this is about right. There's no way 8,000 Marines, no matter how much they're backed by anything, can actually go in and be a substantial invasion force. It's not even clear that they could take Karg Island. But as I said, they have the island. Iran continues to have revenue from, basically taking tolls from any ships coming in and out of the straits. So none of this makes sense to me. That's why I said at the very beginning, when people were saying, "Oh, do you think there's going to be a war?" I said, no. I said, the reason there won't be a real war, I thought he might fire a few missiles into the air and claim victory and run home again like he did during the last 12-day war, because there's no way out. Once you light this dumpster on fire, it does not go out. it just spreads. And that's what we've seen. It went from a war with Iran now to a regional war, and now it's becoming international.
The crazy thing is, there are U.S. planners who are well aware of this, because I just saw on Twitter somebody digged out an interview with Brzezinski back in 2012, where Brzezinski said Iran can hurt us a lot. Can you imagine what consequences would be to us? If Iraq was massively destabilized, if Bahrain was set on fire, if the northeastern oil fields in Saudi Arabia were attacked, the consequences, the cost would be cumulative. The global economy will be affected. So we're playing with fire here. So they knew. There are people in the U.S. upper echelon that knew the consequences of this war.
They had reports coming out in 2022. This is, like I said, they've gone back 30 years. Coincidentally, about 30 years ago was when Netanyahu decided that he did not want to negotiate peace for Israel. What he wanted to do was basically weaken all countries around Israel. And that, the last piece of that puzzle was, of course, Iran. But, because it's 1,000 kilometers away, they couldn't, and there's only 7.5 million Jews and the 92 million Iranians, they couldn't do it themselves. They had to rely on the US, and they've, 7 presidents said no. Why? Because over that period, every single intelligence and military group has said, can't do it. The damage would be, outstanding. I mean, Brzezinski wasn't saying anything new. He was simply repeating, the studies that had been done over this long period of time. And, but Donald Trump did it. The only reason I can think that he did it was that he wanted to keep the Epstein files off the front page, which it did do for a few days. But, the idea of pedophilia, and there's so many names in there, and it looks like there's an elite cabal which is running the U.S. and at the same time that they're pedophiles. I mean, this is not going to go away. I don't know why he thinks it will. Even if he leaves, he says he's going to leave. It doesn't matter what he does. Iran will continue to use the Straits of Hormuz as basically as a lever, and also to replace the lost economic value of their oil. That continues. So, his latest thing, as we knew even before he went into Iran, is that he wanted to take over Cuba. Now, Cuba cannot defend itself. It's in blackout. It's being rationed with, oil. I mean, the Russians have sent a tanker there, and they promised to send more. Mexico has sent rice, and China has sent boatloads of rice. Mexico has been sending intermediate goods, spare parts, and things like this, and a little bit of energy. But he, at any time, the U.S. can go in there, and they can take over an island that's been impoverished because of the sanctions that we put on them. And it's really a shame. I mean, I don't know why he thinks that will be enough to keep Epstein off the front pages. I doubt it will. I mean, they can't put up much of a fight. They don't have any food. Even if they retreat to the jungle, they still have to eat. They still have to have armaments and things like that. And they might be prepared, but it's just not enough, unfortunately. But it could lead to a very uncomfortable situation where you still have an insurgency, which is going against whatever U.S. interests, basically, what happened in Afghanistan. And remember, I mean, the 350,000 troops that we trained in Afghanistan, local troops, plus our own troops, were defeated by 30 to 40,000 Taliban people. They didn't have tanks. They basically just had jeeps with machine guns and rocket-propelled grenades. They didn't have a navy. They certainly didn't have an air force, and yet we were chased out. So it gives you the idea of the asymmetry of war as it has developed. Drones and missiles, technology have replaced the tank. the submarine and the aircraft carrier. So it's a changing world, but for some reason, the Pentagon hasn't quite caught up there.
Well, this is where I want to maybe talk about the recent Pakistan-China joint peace proposal. I mean, this comes at this particular juncture when we know, Trump on one hand really look for an exit ramp, but on the other hand, he can't because it's not up to him anymore whether when to end the war. And so it's interesting that, first of all, it was Pakistan and China's joint proposal, because Pakistan, in addition to being very close to China, is also very close to all the GCC countries and also United States. So there's a high likelihood that before the Pakistan foreign minister traveled to Beijing to see Wang Yi, he probably have already convened, with the GCC heads and even informed United States of his intention of going to Beijing to do this. So, and the fact that Washington hasn't said anything, I think, can be seen maybe as a sort of a approval, or hoping this will do something. What's your take on this? What is your take on this peace proposal?
Okay. So the one thing people have to realize is that China and the U.S. operate differently. China doesn't start wars. It's not projecting power. It's not threatening anybody. It does respond. If you put tariffs on China, they will put tariffs on you. If you do something against China, they will do it. So it's more a tit for tat. You hit them, they'll hit back. But it's defensive in nature. China, a lot of people ask, oh, why isn't China wading in? Okay, so how would this work? China does not have a clear path. They don't have an army that's geared towards offensive actions. And if they did try to do that at this point in an unprepared way, they would be running up against the United States directly, two major nuclear powers. That is not going to help the world. I mean, we could be looking at a nuclear confrontation that is an unknown, which could be literally world-ending. So China, and it doesn't fit with China's idea. They say they don't say that armed conflict is the way to settle this. And they're not in a position to say we're going to pay for everything or that we're going to dictate the terms. This would be the U.S. Way of doing it. It's this old colonial thing. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it, or I'm going to, literally beat the hell out of you, and you're going to be sorry. And that's exactly what Trump has been saying to Iran. Either you give me what I want, or I'll bomb you even more. As if he hasn't been bombing them. Took it out of their leaders. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, how much more can he do? He says he's going to take out all of the electrical facilities. Okay, so everyone's in the dark. I mean, you've destroyed the economy. You can keep going lower and lower. They've taken on schools. 2 days ago, they bombed a factory that made cancer medicines. I mean, obviously that's for psychological effect. But in terms of China's position, they say, look, this only way to have a lasting peace is not to force terms on the parties. First, you have to have enough trust to sit around the table. And of course, Iran, for obvious reasons, doesn't trust the U.S. because the U.S. has used negotiations as a subterfuge for war or attacks. So Iran, if and when it comes, well, not if, at some point, Iran comes to the table. But from their perspective, they want, when they're at the table, they want a United States that has been severely weakened economically and is in a position where it also wants peace. It doesn't want to continue. Then the issue about Israel and the 118 to 120 nuclear devices that they have, how do you deal with them? I mean, an ideal situation would be all U.S. bases leave the area. Israel gives up their nuclear weapons. They all sign a non-nuclear proliferation. The IAEA is given full access to it. The U.S. pays reparations for its actions, this unwarranted attack, and sanctions are lifted. Chances of that happening right now, pretty much zero. We haven't gotten to the point where, like the Westphalian peace, where the two sides are so tired and bankrupt from war that they are willing to say, okay, you be you and we'll be us. And we just don't need to fight. We know where the lines are drawn in terms of borders, and we're not going to interfere with your stuff. You don't interfere with ours. I don't know that we've reached that point, but that at some point, that's where the world has to be, because Iran's actions are affecting the world. It's not just affecting the US. And there has to be a global reaction. It's not just Pakistan with China supporting it. It's going to have to involve the BRICS. The EU would be wonderful. The organizations that represent South America, ASEAN, and then also the stands and Africa. They come together as a group and say, look, this is just one point where we're coming together because we have to. And tell the United States, stop with your nonsensical tariffs. If you want to tariff your people, fine, but the tariffs will be uniform across the board, and that's up to you. And no more attacking other nations. And they say to Iran, you have to open up the Straits of Hormuz. The sanctions have to be dropped. Now, what leverage would such a group have? The leverage they have is they can say to both parties that if you do not abide by this, you will be ostracized from the global financial and trade system. The U.S. imports trillions of dollars. The U.S. economy cannot exist without its imports. And that is the leverage that the world needs to use in order to bring this whole thing down to some place where you can at least gather around the table these other groups who do have the trust of both parties, or at least are known to both parties, and have some leverage in terms of this economic clout, can say it's time to bury the hatchet and not in each other. And that's the only way I can see this going. So China's role here is not to say, okay, we know what's good for everybody. They're coming in and say, we need to establish first trust. First, stop killing each other, stop destroying things. Then we need to sit down and figure out how this would work. But it's not going to be a situation where China is sitting at the head of the table telling people what they do. What they see themselves as, we're building a table that people can sit around. But actually settling this is going to depend on a consensus, on cooperation, recognizing mutual interest. And this is something which is very, very new to the U.S. U.S. And colonial powers, they never really did this. They go to war with each other, take each other's stuff, or they take stuff from other nations that couldn't defend themselves. And this is the way that they got rich and also maintained their power. The world is too small for that, and it's now multipolar. And these developed countries need the resources that the global South has. And that is the leverage point that has to be used in order to create a world that hopefully can get along and not have all these conflicts and wars.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, but unfortunately, I also agree with your reading that neither side at this point has reached that point of total exhaustion where they would sit down and try to reach a peace agreement. Trump, they just had come up with an even crazier plan than sending Marine to Khark Island. He now wants to send special forces to extract Iran's nuclear material. I mean, I've never heard a more stupid plan than that. If you think Sending Marines to take Khark Island is going to be hard. Sending special forces deep into the mountains of Iran, going to underground to retrieve the nuclear material. Oh my God. That's a disaster in the making.
I know, but you have to understand that this isn't realistic. Maybe some idiot who doesn't really have any real combat experience or strategy, I should say strategy experience, like Hegseth. Maybe he says, "Oh yeah, well, it's like the movies. we'll send in the special squad and they'll run down there, Mission Impossible type stuff." That's not reality. And the fact is, if they think that the Iranians will know they're coming, they're dug in. How is that going to work? What, you're going to blow it all up, have nuclear radiation all over the place? I mean, Trump doesn't think these things out. So the only thing I can come to is that he's getting bad advice, but he also likes these ideas because they keep the Epstein files off the front page. And this is his main thing. I mean, every day now they're coming out with where are these files? Why are everything that relates to Trump being, hidden, especially, these allegations that he raped little girls, which were found credible. Why wasn't this included? Right? Why is it all this stuff things? And then, people start wondering about the other 3 million pages that aren't being released. Why? The lawmakers, you don't have a choice. You have to release them. You're going against the law by not releasing them.
Like a month and a half ago, before the war started, when I had you and you said Trump will have to keep on escalating, creating more and more distractions to get away from Epstein file. This is what I'm afraid of, because right now we are entering a very dangerous phase of the war. The Marines and 82nd Airborne are on the way to Iran. And according to the latest report, the U.S. is actually deploying a total of 17,000 ground troops to Iran, in addition to the 50,000 troops that's already in the Middle East. I mean, this has like Vietnam written all over it. This is what I'm afraid of.
No, it has exactly the same. You can go back to the Iraq War, Afghanistan, every single one of these, and they say the same thing. We'll be in and out in a few weeks, most a month, and it just goes over, and then people start dying, and it becomes a forever war and things like that. These are just the things that American administrations say. It's in the playbook. Promise them anything, but none of it works. And this is really what is strange. Is having the experience that we've had over these many years with these countries that we've invaded, it hasn't worked out. Where have we won? All right. Where has there been a lasting peace that we've created through war? It hasn't happened. So, the definition of insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that right now, to the rest of the world, the United States looks insane. And in terms of escalating, unfortunately, that's all he has left. He has to distract people. There was, a lot of pundits before the speech he gave that thought he was going to offer something up to the American people. The checks in the mail, that type of thing. He said that a couple of times. It hasn't happened, but, maybe that was the way to promise something, to keep things off. But there was a man who was totally defeated, alternating between "I'm out of here" to I'm gonna bomb you back to the Stone Ages. It's not good. He's running out of options, and the escalation, as you pointed out, how do you escalate from here? How do you escalate from a war that's could have started World War III? So it is worrying in terms of what he's going to do next. But the only thing we know for certain is as soon as he pulls away from Iran, he's going to go after Cuba as a diversion. It's going to hurt a lot of people. It's not going to solve the problems in Ukraine, nor will it solve the problems in Iran. Or the problems throughout the world. I mean, right now, everyone's talking about Pakistan, but Pakistan is in actual war with Afghanistan. I mean, these are not settled times. You go to Republic of Congo, they have a civil war going on there. I mean, around the world, when the supposed adults, the great powers, are ignoring all conventions, all laws, all institutions, it gives a green light for other nations to say, well, if no one's going to abide by the rules, why should I? I'm just going to take my chances, try to grab it. But this war is opening up a new aspect, which is very worrying. In addition, well, it's all worrying, but water. Some of the Gulf countries are 90% dependent on desalination plants. They take the seawater and they make it into fresh water. If their desalination plants are attacked, these people have to leave. There's no other alternative. And you're starting to look at, what that would look like in terms of refugees, millions of refugees flooding into other areas, especially in the Middle East, which are already problematic because of what Israel has done and the U.S. has supported. This is not going in the right direction. And water is something you can't live without. And quite frankly, places like Yemen, there are wars over water. In the sub-Saharan Africa, there are wars over water. One tribe will go to another tribe and take their water and kill everybody. It's something you can't live without. And no one is trying to solve the problem. Instead, they think that adding more guns, bombs, and bullets is going to somehow solve it. And we know that this is not the way to do it. So it's puzzling to me always how they use these same old tired scripts, as you were pointing out, to justify wars that have no point, that will end over a negotiating table. But under the table will be the blood and bodies of innocent civilians in addition to combatants. Just doesn't make sense from a rational point of view. But we've been doing this as a human race for far too long, yet we don't seem to have learned.
Well, I think one of the problem is the decision maker who led us into those wars. They have never been held accountable. I mean, like, nobody's ever getting punished, and so they can get away with it. They can get away with it and make everybody else pay the price. Like Trump is making the whole world paying the price for his foolish war over Iran right now. But
the Epstein files. that's the weirdest thing about it, is he's attacked another country to cover up the fact that he is implicated in child pornography or pedophilia.
Yeah, because American president, they don't get impeached for starting wars. He might get impeached for Epstein files, but he's not going to get impeached for starting a war.
Well, actually, at this point, Carl, going back to what you said earlier, he's going to be impeached for just pure corruption. What his kids have done. His net worth has gone up by $5 billion in the last year. I mean, what can you say? I mean, this hasn't been a good year for everybody, and yet he's making out like a bandit, and his kids are still running around. His older kid bought a American drone company for a pittance, and then the next day they got these massive contracts from the military, from the Pentagon, and all of a sudden the value, of what he made hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, it's just they're not trying to hide it, which is the very odd point things. And the only conclusion I can come to is they just say, it doesn't matter what we do, Dad will pardon us. We'll keep the money because once the pardon kicks in, we don't have to pay it back. That's where there's hundreds of millions of dollars in Medicaid fraud. Remember, he's going after the Somalians in Minnesota, and the theory that they've taken, tens of millions of dollars. Meanwhile, people who've been convicted, and those are allegations. There is some truth to it. There was fraud there, but guys who were convicted of over $100 million worth of medical fraud, not paying their employees, have been miraculously after a couple of months in jail, given full pardons, meaning they don't have to pay the money back. No fine. It's done. So, I mean, this is a kleptocracy. It's being run for profit. And Donald Trump he wants to keep it going as long as he can, then pardon everybody. And, from his point of view, whatever happens, the family's going to be rich.
Well, on that happy note, we can wrap up this episode with Einar Tangen.
This will cheer you up. I'm sorry. I wish I could say that there were good tidings in the future, but I don't.
I know, because this, people talk about, Trump is going to pay in the coming midterm election. But midterm election is in November. If the Strait of Hormuz remain closed until November, we're really, really deep trouble. Deep trouble. So this is what I am worried about. But if people want to listen to your, follow you for more gem of your wisdom, Einar, where would they go?
Well, if they feel compelled and they're really bored, I'm at Asian Narratives Substack. So I write there occasionally, a couple of times a week. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that it's going to be a happy go lucky thing. I do try when possible to point to what I think are the possibilities, how we can get things out. Try to put a little sunlight into the darkness, but yeah, right now it's very, very, very difficult. I was writing a piece about war and the fact that everyone talks about refugees and casualties and injured and things like that, and they're absolutely right to do that. We should give every country pause. But the violence and the legacy of it goes much deeper. In order to dehumanize, if you look at how Israeli has convinced their soldiers that Palestinians and Arabs are less than human and they can be killed like cockroaches and should be killed, even children, that there are going to be long-term problems. How do those people return to society? How do they raise kids? How do they become productive members? And what happens when they become these monsters is going to carry on for generations. And unfortunately, the victims who survive this kind of violence, they're going to be looking for revenge. And they're also going to believe that the only way to get revenge is war. So, every time you have a war, you're perpetuating the next war. And I mean, this isn't something unique that I've said. This has been said from, many, many years, going back to ancient philosophers. They knew that. And unfortunately, we continue. So let's hope that we learn at some point. Maybe AI can make us more cognizant of our history.
Well, speaking of AI, Iran is waging the war against AI right now. They're targeting Palantir. They said Palantir data centers in the Gulf region are legitimate target, which I agree, because Palantir has been deeply embedded with U.S. military, including selecting targets in Iran. So, I mean,
well, not only on Iran, worldwide. Palantir is supplying information to regular police force. So when they go and check your car registration, everything about you comes up, including your bank accounts, when you last took money out, how much money went in. They know everything about you. I mean, there's no privacy. In fact, if you talk to Palantir, they'll tell you that they don't believe in privacy, that all data has to be theirs and that they'll distribute it. And this is where I'm going. Palantir is Peter Thiel. That's directly connected to Advance, to Dark Enlightenment, and this idea that the government needs to be done away with so that it can be privatized by these tech titans who will rule us because we're unruly.
And if you listen to these the tech tycoons and the media outlet they sponsor, they will tell you China is a problem. because everything they're doing, they accuse China of doing that, and then they tell you you should be scared of China because the Chinese EV is gathering your data and sending it back to Beijing.
It's not only there. I mean, almost everything that Trump does, he first accuses other people of doing, or he accuses them afterwards. Remember, he's talking about fraud. There's no bigger fraud than him. He complained about Biden giving out, all these pardons. What is he doing? I mean, it's classic. You always know what Trump's going to do because he accuses something of doing exactly what he intends to do. Remember, he accused Obama. He said Obama's going to start a war with Iran to divert attention from his economy. Ooh. Ooh.
If somebody invent a time machine and travel back to 2016 and tell them what will happen in the future, I don't think anybody would believe them.
And look, when the Simpsons, the ultimate parody was to say that Donald Trump was president, and we're talking 25 years ago. This was a joke, and now we're living with a joke. As they say, you elect a clown, you get a circus.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Einar, again for making the time to speak to us in this very unsettled times, and I love to have you back. My audience love you.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and I hope I didn't interrupt you too much because I received a lot of complaints last time. Say, Carl, don't interrupt Einar when he's talking.
I think you make more sense than I do, so I think they were just trying to be polite.
Well, thank you very much, Einar. And everybody else, thank you for tuning in. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Until next time.